yeah, this video is going to be all over the place. The long-anticipated Canadian team-up has finally hit the big screen. I mean a proper one, as we get to see Fox's flagship draws of Deadpool and Wolverine finally get their buddy cop movie in. Too bad it just wasn't a Fox movie. I gotta say that this was an unexpected but well done goodbye to see these films that have been floating around for the past 2 decades. Heck, they have practically been hundreds of millions first-time introductions to the iconic franchises of X-Men and Fantastic Four. It's just that it's so poetic that in the fiery collapse of everything that was Fox's attempts at making Marvel adaptations work for the past 20 years, raises not the hurt of not ever seeing this company in charge again. Oh no! On the contrary, rather us saying, thank you, we've been waiting for this for years. Disregarding the literal Fox sign being treated like garbage, Deadpool and Wolverine was shockingly a heartfelt send-off to all these equally iconic yet external properties that help promote Marvel's dominance on the big screen, even with the non-Fox ones. As Snipes was able to put down the fake beef with Reynolds to go get his proper applause for being a pioneer, and even the ones that just never kicked off got their love, like Channing Tatum in his forever fight to get his chance to play Gambit. I gotta be honest, I don't have many deep, mind-boggling things to say about the film itself. It's more or less a Deadpool movie that's shot and structured like an MCU movie. And while that may not sound appealing to a lot of people, trust me, it's really not as bad as it sounds. I think what really got me thinking after watching this film was more a gradual fascination at not only the potential ripple effects the movie will have for future MCU experiences, but also I was just astonished at just how, for lack of better words, interesting the entire Fox run was. Because calling this run inconsistent would be the biggest understatement of all understatements.
Do you know what happens to a toad?
There's no denying that Fox's Marvel films have that iconic nature about them because they are the ones that introduced many of these beloved characters onto that big screen. But in hindsight, does that revolutionary nature surrounding those introductions supersede the fact that many of these movies just didn't want to be a superhero movie while simultaneously not thinking of anything else creative it could be? Like, we can get credit for the attempt while also recognizing that behind many of these films were the workings of soulless corporations that not only didn't know anything about these characters, but didn't know anything about writing either. Eyes were ever only on those box office numbers and what draw they can stir up in the now, resulting in unnatural tension, lackluster decisions, and complete absence of any sort of planning for anything that wasn't seen in the immediate movie you were working on, if you couldn't already tell from the 5 different X-Men timelines. So unless your movie was titled X2, chances are your direct sequel was bound to be worse than what your first, already mediocre movie was. Now, other than outliers like Logan, First Class, and Days of Future Past, Fox adaptations also sort of lack that timeless feel, as they are the exact type of products that are influenced by their era. It's almost a different side of the same coin thing they got going on with the modern MCU, and that characters feel like an archetype for the most part, following a formula, but instead of using misplaced comedy to develop this relatable type, they mostly try to fit those simplistic action archetypes. It doesn't work a lot of times. But when this edge does work, like with Wolverine and Deadpool to a certain extent, that's when they end up abundantly shoved down everyone's throats. Even the Charles and Magneto conflict sparked interesting scenes, but then it led to forced conflict so that they can keep rehashing the same internal struggles within Magneto. And I would simply ask for them to go back to the comic to cook up something else, but we already know they don't read the comics, because that would be asking for too much. For the most part, I've never been too much of a stickler for comic accuracy if the change is able to produce something that fits better within the context of the film, and the film ends up being just as or even more interesting of an interpretation than what was given in said comics. A Doctor Doom relegated to being an annoying businessman is neither faithful to the comics nor an interesting interpretation. Seeing these figureheads of Marvel being stripped of their identity and pushed to background filler is not only annoying but actively spits in the face of comic fans who wanted to see this film. I mean, I should know. I'm a big fan of Storm and got to see her go from having her only bit of characterization be that she was played by Halle Berry to another adaptation where she just says, cool, I'm down with genocide. But hey, at least she wasn't Cyclops, who's been handled so poorly on the big screen that people have been giving extra praise to X-Men 97 for not making him incompetent. The Fantastic Four were another mishandled piece, as a story about a family of explorers gets bastardized into something unrecognizable. With Deadpool, it literally took Ryan Reynolds to fight tooth and nail to get a proper adaptation, and to include simple things like the merc with a mouth having a mouth. And I would talk about how preposterous Daredevil or Elektra are, but let's be real for a second, I'm sure a majority of you guys have never seen those films. Now, you guys need to understand that this is all coming from a place of love. I'm the first to put my fist in the air when we get classics like Logan, and I can even have fun with the worst of the worst releases, but we just can't let this feeling of nostalgia blind us from acknowledging the deep cut, greed-induced, major mistakes this company made with these IPs, which is actually not that far off from modern MCU, but at least they have proper planning about things. I think this fiery ball of Fox madness can actually be summed up quite perfectly by explaining the chaos surrounding their final theatrical release of New Mutants. You see, Generation X and New Mutants were the two comic series particularly that got me into X-Men. So of course I was ecstatic when we got these teases of this horror-infused take on the Young Mutants team. Then boom, thrown for a spiral as this film was in developmental limbo for years. I can't blame Fox for this one though, as this was during the whole Disney buyout time, but what I can blame Fox for is being so touch and go with the stylistic choices, flipping back and forth of if they wanted to commit to horror based on the success of other movies during that time, such as Deadpool and It. It all resulted in this decent but slightly awkward attempt at horror, but director Josh Boone also said that everything in the movie is his story for the most part, so maybe they were just doomed in the first place. Like, for attempting to be a mostly character-driven pieces with relatively low stakes, they sure do stick with basic character archetypes that can be summed up simply as nice girl and mean dude. I would again ask them to take a little peek at comics, even with the director proclaiming to be a fan growing up. But again, that's just asking for too much. Such as for the infamous casting of Sunspot, who, I like to preface, activated his powers after being racially profiled for being black during a soccer match. Yeah, bro was just casted as this dude. Boone only looked for Brazilian actors and said notable things about the matter, such as it was never about skin color, that he didn't really care for the racism he heard about in Brazil, and that he was just looking for someone he envisioned as rich. This is quite literally the Ryan Gosling Black Panther meme come to life. So essentially, you have a movie that contains conflicted higher-ups heavily putting their hand into things, then spitting on the source material, then basing characters on bland archetypes, and then manipulating the aspects of the film based on what's popular at the time. Truly, this was everything wrong with Fox coming to life, and it's so fitting that this and Dark Phoenix are the last thing that we will ever experience from this company touching Marvel. But are things really gonna get that much better? There is no secret that these two companies are going to be intertwined at some of their lowest points. Like, really low points. Yet if I was a betting man, I'd say that things are most likely to turn up for the MCU than it is to turn down. Now before I elaborate, I need to mention this beforehand. I think at this point, it just has to be accepted that Marvel, like Disney Pixar films, have crafted this formula in look, and they're going to stick beside it. No matter how many times we point out this franchise looking dull at times or being too predictable. And to be quite honest, they don't really have to change if they don't want to. They already took the necessary opening steps of regressing a little how many projects they are pumping out a year, really desaturating the market a little. Now all they have to do is trust that our teeny tiny dumb superhero loving brains are going to jump at the opportunity to see how they handle these newly acquired pieces. And guess what? This teeny tiny superhero loving brain is definitely going to jump at the opportunity to see a proper Storm adaptation. Because as surface level as the MCU has shown to be at times, you can't say they don't at least try to embrace the source material and all the campiness that comes with superhero films. The MCU has leverage again, in which they're going to get a lot more willing eyes back on them. And with this unique opportunity, they should be focused on making some statement pieces, really letting the general audience know that the MCU is back to take their top spot. Like, just spitballing here, they could easily take that controversial RDJ Doctor Doom casting and flip it into one of the greatest Doom moments in all of cinema. First, by initially generating those big bucks by tacking on the legendary MCU face to an already legendary villain. The best villain, if you ask me. Then you bring in the real Romani Doom, confirm the other as a Stark multiversal variant, then have him brutally murked by the main Doom in epic fashion, thus delivering on a multitude of storytelling beats in the process. You have established a level of intimidation for those out there who really don't know how cold Doom is. With him offing his own variant, you can also establish that infamous Doctor Doom ego and self-centeredness. And you properly make this Dark Doom a physical allegory of how this pinnacle of villainy has been so misrepresented and dumbed down in cinema, thus leading to the one true MCU Doom to rise above the rest and bring respect to the name of Doctor Doom. It's just after a streak of mediocrity, this is a rare second chance this company is receiving. And I'd like to think that the story ends off on a high note because I don't know how they come back if they mess this up.